Contributor and former chief speechwriter to President George W. Bush, Mark Thiessen. Mark, this is so interesting. So the same poll with Donald Trump at the top of the leaderboard among all the candidates, including Ben Carson, nationally. They're tied in Iowa, but Trump beats Carson nationally. But then when you say, okay, but what if it's just the two of them? It's a totally different result with them clearly favoring Carson. What do you make of it?
It's fascinating. Well, first of all, we got to put it in perspective. There's not going to be a national primary with two people on the ballot, so it's a hypothetical. It's not going to happen, but it does teach us some very interesting things. First of all those other people you showed, other than Ben Carson, have one thing in common: they're politicians. Yep. Ben Carson is not a politician; he's an outsider, and so Donald Trump handily beats all of the politicians. But when he's faced with a conservative outsider, he loses, and by a lot, 19 points. That's a big defeat. So the question is, what is Ben Carson doing that's different than all these other candidates? So outside of being an outsider, number one, he's not copying Donald Trump, and number two, he's not attacking Donald Trump. He's being Ben Carson. He's running a positive, hopeful, optimistic campaign that's focused on lifting people up. You had him on the show a few weeks ago. It was fascinating when he was spending a day campaigning in Harlem. And not a lot of Republicans go to Harlem. And he looked at those people and he said, whether you vote for me or not, I'm going to fight for you. That's an enormously appealing message, and it's resonating with a lot of people. The
difficulty in this situation is, I mean, you heard Charles Krauthammer say in the last block that he thought it was impossible to assail Ben Carson's character, you know, that his life story is so compelling. However, is Trump going to have to do it? I mean, he's gently attacking Carson a little bit yesterday with the Daily Caller, but is he going to have to do it?
Well, it's a tricky thing, because it's one thing to attack Jeb Bush. Jeb Bush is the son of a great political dynasty. He's a wealthy man and seen as part of the political establishment. Number one, Ben Carson is not part of the political establishment. He's an outsider. Two, as you point out, he's got an incredible life story. He's a guy who grew out of some of the worst poverty you could possibly imagine, became a world-renowned neurosurgeon that saved thousands of children's lives, separated Siamese twins. And so he's got a compelling story. He's caring. He's inspiring. To attack somebody like that is pretty hard to do and get away with, and it's the big danger of blowback.
And the favorability poll, the numbers that are also in this poll, suggest there's danger there, because Trump has huge favorability numbers. If you look at this poll, look how much people like him. It's 59% to 29% who don't. And the only person above him on this poll is Ben Carson. Look at his numbers. 67% like him. Just 6% say they don't like him. So there's obviously danger if you hit the guy too hard.
Yeah, he's a very popular guy. Trump's positive negative had actually improved a lot. It was a lot worse before. But Ben Carson has the highest positives and the lowest negatives of any candidate in the field. And so, yeah, it's very hard to go after somebody. And what do you go after Ben Carson for? I mean, he's a nice guy.
Well, Trump came out yesterday and intimated, you know, look, he's a nice guy and I like him, but he hasn't created jobs. He was sitting in an operating room with nurses.
And Donald Trump was supporting partial birth abortion. So I mean, you know, everybody's got their problems. this is you know, I mean, it's going to be a political campaign, and they're going to debate the ideas. But I think Ben Carson has been very clear he's not going to go after Donald Trump.
Another question for you. We're going to have Ted Cruz coming up next on this county court clerk. He's pretty tight there. He's in it. He's 41 to 48 with Trump. What do you make of that? Because he's a senator, but he's been running as an outsider.
No, that's really interesting, because one of the most interesting numbers from the Monmouth poll was 67% of GOP voters want somebody who's an outsider who's never held public office. 67%. Only 26% want somebody with government experience. So that's why you see when you combine Trump and Carson together get 48% of the vote. Almost half. If you throw in there, it's 52. So the outsiders, the majority of Republicans are voting for outsiders who've never held office. Now, Cruz paints himself as an outsider, and he's played himself as an outsider in Washington, so he has a little bit of a chance to sort of claim that outsider role, even though he's been tainted by his time in Washington.
He should go with that, because remember we did that segment about a year ago on how the approval rating of Congress was lower than that of a cockroach. People prefer a cockroach to members of Congress. And hemorrhoids. They prefer, I mean, somebody actually asked that question, which would you prefer? So no wonder everybody's running as an outsider. What? Me? Washington? Never. Mark, great to see you.